The voltage modular's Byte Oscillator is a common generator of standard wave shapes, a low-fee wave generator, sometimes even not that low-fee at all, a sample player, a granular sound machine, a bit crusher, a universal effect plug-in, a coding environment, a wavetable synth, a signal mapper, and a toy to delight your 3-year-old daughter and to drive your neighbors crazy. All right. There are 3 levels of using the Byte Oscillator. At level 1, you don't use nor even need any mathematics nor coding. Here you simply use the presets, do some pitch tuning, some easy modulations, a bit of purely mechanically complicating and simplifying the sound, a bit of randomization using different bit depths and sample rates, doing basic operations with samples, and the same doing basic granular treatments. That's all. It's a lot of fun, and you'll even come to some useful results. At level 2, you need some, at least basic knowledge of 8-bit sound programming and a tiny little bit of mathematics. Here, you dive a bit deeper into algorithms and sources you see and use, and tweak wave shaping functions and pitches, and do some advanced operations with samples, and some advanced granular treatments as well. Most of you will end up at this level 2, I guess, and that's okay. You can achieve a lot here. At level 3, you dive deep into byte beats. Here you extensively use tables, macros, treat every sound you want bitwise and code complex sounds, patterns and melodies. You really know what you are doing. 3 levels. 3 levels. I'm going to teach you all of them. 3 levels, 3 videos. This is video 1. Some important things to say before I start. If you subscribe and like after watching this video or parts of it, I'd be really glad. But you should also know the following. I give private language lessons here at home in the Czech Republic, and mathematics and physics and even philosophy. That's one way to make my living. And I write ebooks about working with sound and making music, and I produce non-public videos about these matters. That's the second way I make my living. I have to confront you with the cruel reality now. If the earnings from my sound works are sufficiently high to ensure my biological existence, there will be a lot less lessons and a lot more videos and ebooks. If not, then there will be more lessons at home and less videos and less ebooks. That's life. You can support me. You can support me by just buying me a coffee. See the donate link down in the descriptions. Or by visiting the shop at my website and buying a video or an ebook. Or you can even become a member of our raw film community, and get everything in the shop for free, even new future products, as long as your membership lasts. There is a membership page at my website in case you wanted to learn more about that matter. Thank you very much indeed. And now let's dive into the world of the Byte Oscillator at last. After adding the Byte Oscillator to our rack, we get the default preset, what is a saw wave playing a melody. Kind of. Let's listen to it for a while and then go further. Let me use the word algorithm instead of preset from now on. I'll talk about algorithms in video number 2 of the series. For now, let's only scan through some of these algorithms by clicking the ALG button in the upper left corner of the GUI and select a few of them. Don't worry, I'll explain these hieroglyphic-looking algorithms in the course of this series in detail. But all in all, things don't look and sound very impressive so far, right? Well, let's rather take a systematic approach then, and we will discover fantastic, really, and exciting things on the road. Let me choose another algorithm, one with sine waves. If we interpret these hieroglyphic algorithms more or less correctly, there is a T in the expression and there is a T button, which is lit. Turning the big knob below the button changes the pitch. Alright, the knobs semi and fine below the first two columns of jacks look as if we could guess their function, and indeed semi tunes the sound in steps of semitones, and fine tunes the sound smoothly and seamlessly in an even higher resolution. I want to know the frequency range of these three knobs. To find out, I anticipate a tiny bit of working with algorithms. I double-click in the algorithm window and delete some of the hieroglyphs until I have only one expression containing the word sin, meaning, of course, sine wave. Now I see that the big knob below the T button covers the whole audible frequency range with steps of 1 octave. The semi-knob covers 14 semitones, -7 to +7 semitones, what is 2 semitones more than 1 octave. And the fine knob covers ±1 semitone. To follow the next steps, I have to ask you to undertake a mathematically very demanding operation. You must replace the letter T by the letter U in the algorithm. Double-click in the window, replace T by U, and click outside the window again. By the way, you will have come to the conclusion that T and U and V and X and so on are something like the variables in the mathematical expressions and equations they have tortured you at school with. And, well, you are quite right. Quite right. Not perfectly right. But later more about this in videos 2 and 3. Now that we have a U in the algorithm, we should make the knobs at the bottom torturing this U and not the T. To do so, I click the U button under the algorithm window. Please watch the positions of the knobs down below the input jacks. Their positions are specific for each of these T's and U's and V's and so on. I've made a little melody in my DAW, patching voltage modular's pitch jack into the pitch jack of the Byte Oscillator, and let the melody play. Now I click the button called Volt per Octave and choose the option Free from the pop-up menu. The module stops following the pitch information. And it's the same with other CV sources fed into the pitch jack of the module. Let me explain the other options mentioned in the menu. The option Offset makes the U variable, let's still call it a variable for now, depend on the values which the T variable is set to. The big knob below the U button sets the offset in octaves, negative or positive ones, which is added or subtracted from the T value. The option Overtones adds or subtracts an offset from the values of T too, but not in octaves, but in overtones. Well, the name says it, doesn't it? But what does this mean? Well, the term overtones doesn't mean just any partial in a spectrum, but really only the frequency in the harmonic series. One octave higher, followed by a perfect fifth higher, followed by a perfect fourth higher, and so on. Let me demonstrate this. To do so, I exchange the U for a T, and vice versa, to show the frequency value of T and the related value of U. The step mode, which the menu offers, is going to be a matter of video number 2, because to make you really understand step, I have to explain things a bit deeper. Let me use the input jacks now. Each of these T's and U's and V's has a row of jacks below, the first 2 of which are inputs to modulate the parameters and values. The upper jacks belong to the knob called CV1, and the jack in the middle, the lower input jack, belongs to the knob called CV2. The lowest of the 3 jacks in each column is an output. Which parameter each of this jack-knob combination determines depends on the chosen option in the pop-up menu above the CV knobs. I choose the option Pitch, of course. I choose Pitch for both knobs at the moment. Later, I change this. Later in the course of this series about the Byte Oscillator, I'm going to demonstrate a couple of other combinations. Well, after such a lot of heavenly beautiful melodies, it's time for some harsher kinds of sounds and time for a bit of tweaking these algorithms without a deeper understanding of the matter so far. The buttons next to the algorithm button invite us to mess around with these sound-generating expressions without having a certain intention. These buttons, which are MUT for mutation, CMPL for complement, SMPF for simplify, RND for random, and RES for reset. They change the algorithm in the window below. Mutation or mutating, MUT, changes the mathematical operations like plus and multiply and WSIN and all the other cryptic expressions as well as our variables. MUT changes both. I type a highly complicated term, T times 5, to start with and click the MUT button a few times to demonstrate this. Not all results deliver something useful though. With the reset button on the right, I can always return to the algorithm which I had manually written before I started pushing and clicking the MUT button, MUT button. With CMPL, I extend the actual algorithm, and again, it's not always something useful what I get. And SMPF works the opposite. It removes parts of the algorithm, but I don't get what I had at the beginning because the simple most algorithm is a single T, and therefore I always end up with that T. The RND random button works only on the values of X, Y, and Z, not on fixed numbers, not on T, U, and V. Instead of manually clicking the buttons, I can use the input jacks below them and patch gates in. Using complement and simplify at the same time, but with different frequencies of the gate signal, leads to an endless succession of changing sounds. Bit depth and sample rate now. Let me use some algorithms to mess around with different bit depths and different sample rates at first before I explain what these parameters do. Please notice that changing the bit depth changes the pitch too with some algorithms, not with all of them. I'm going to explain this phenomenon in a later video in this series. Let me use a part of an older video of mine to let you remember what bit depth and sample rate are. Let's recall what the bit depth means when we talk about converting digital and analog audio into each other. The whole process contains two main steps, sampling and quantization. In the first step, the sampling, the converter takes photographs, let me call it photographs, of the audio curve, or to say it less figuratively, the converter stores the positive or negative voltage of the curve at a certain moment. How often the converter takes these photos is determined by the sampling rate. The higher the sampling rate, the better is the quality of the sampling process. Just for the in-depth and in-detail thinking kind of guys of you, some people depict the result of a series of taken samples like that. That's wrong. The region between two consecutive samples is simply not defined at all. But our computers cannot deal with the gained amounts of voltage directly, therefore the second main step has to be done, the quantization. We could call it even the rounding off between two possible levels. You'll know this from your glorious days at math classes at school. 2.8 gets 3, but 2.4 gets 2, and so on. In this example, there are only two possible levels, 3 and 2. It's a rather coarse quantization, far too coarse, too rough for getting good results with audio. When we talk about audio voltage, two levels means only plus or minus. The bit depth determines the quality of the quantization because it determines how many possible levels of rounding off there are. Two levels corresponds to a bit depth of 1. With each additional bit depth, the amount of possible levels doubles. 2-bit depth means 2-bit bit depth means 4 possible levels, 3-bit means 8 possible levels, 4-bit means 16 possible levels, and so on. Perhaps it's more helpful for predicting the results of sampling at different bit depths and different sample rates when I put the information I gave in the video in a different form. The sample rate, the number of photographs taken per second, how many details along the time axis, along the x-axis the result will contain. The sample rate sets how many details, whereas the bit depth determines how precise along the level axis, along the y-axis, these photographs are taken. Welcome back to 2021 and to the Byte Oscillator. I mentioned samples. Well, let's use samples with the Byte Oscillator then. To load a sample, we click on the button labeled SMPL, sample, left of the algorithm window, and a whole bunch of new buttons appear. We can load and work with up to 6 different samples. We can loop them, we can normalize them, we can make them play back in reverse, and a lot more. Sample slot 1 is lit by default, so I load the sound of an old door here. Then I click on sample slot number 2 and load another sample. We still don't hear a sample. I'm going to change this in a minute, but I want to show you something else at first. The adjustments loop, normalize, and reverse can be set for each of the samples individually. No, that's not the right way to explain it. These settings can be set for each sample slot individually, and that's something else. Let me demonstrate this. I have the sample of the old door in slot number 1 and the sample of the bottles in slot number 2. I set the door to one-shot playback by deactivating the loop button and choose reverse playback, switching between the samples at the sample slots shows the individual settings. But using the sample switches, these little arrows, I choose which of the loaded samples is in the actual slot, whose setting I have just changed. The settings belong to the slots. The arrows make me change the sample which is in this slot. But I want to hear, of course I want, the loaded samples at last. To achieve that, I activate the loop mode again, click the main button and change the algorithm to SMPL1 of T. With the pitch knob below the T button, I adjust the playback speed, and changing back to the sample functions, I can choose which sample I want to listen to. I also could have changed the number of the sample slot in the algorithm to change the sample which I am listening to. Now I want to trigger the sample. I ensure that the T variable, is activated, patch an LFO in the gate jack, and change the mode of the knob labeled GRNL to gate mode. With the position knob I can determine where the playback of the sample shall begin with every gate signal. With the CV injects I can automate changing positions. I patch the second LFO in the upper CV inject and change the target of the CV1 knob to position. I could have used the second CV inject and the knob CV2 as well, and play around with different modulation strengths. And what about a bit of messing up the sample rate and the bit depth? I have removed all modulations again. I could have left them active because all of the following is valid even with modulations going on, but I don't want to make things too complicated in this first video. We are still at level 1 anyway. Now I change from gate mode to granular mode and try different lengths of the grains. Introducing a bit of modulation again shall finish this first video now. In video number 2, we will climb up to level 2 with a solid portion of working with algorithms and a lot more. Thank you for watching. Enjoy your day. Your Rolf.